Are you working on assertiveness in communication? And would you like to move away from saying to people, it's okay, I'll step back so that things stay smooth, and move towards saying to people, I exist here too, and I'm allowed to take up space fairly? I've been experiencing this, and so I mapped it. This is the mapping framework I used, and this is how you draw it. I call it the Realcovery Model. I always number the bottom triangle number 1, and here I'm using it to map my old pattern, how I used to communicate. In conversation with other people, I would not want to risk tension or rupture, and so I would preempt it, and I would step back and give way to the other person in conversation. I would be the cheerleader, I would be the encourager, but I wouldn't offer my own thoughts and opinions. I would accept second place because it was safe and because it kept the peace. If I could feel somehow that I was visible and taking up space, it would feel really wrong. And so what I would do is I would recognize the space that I was taking up, and I would gradually shrink it down. So I would, like I'm drawing here, I would slowly make myself really small until I wasn't really a participant. I was more of an audience member. And then I would, because people feel silence, don't they? The other person would then naturally fill that space. And I would do this and I would justify it. I would tell myself that I was being nice, that I was doing something good for the other person. But it would leave me with a sense of discomfort in my body. I couldn't ignore that forever, and this is what happened. I reached my edge, and I also had to explore my edges. I'll explain. Triangle 2 is always a space for exploring, experimenting, for questioning, for reflecting, for trial and error. And it leads to creating and then solidifying and then knowing. It's the forming and growing phase in life. So here I asked the question, can I speak up? And then I experimented with whether I could. Now, interestingly, here the Realcovery seesaw scales appear because trial and error is an experience of finding balance, and I have to find my edges. I experience what it's like to not speak up enough, to be passive and to not ask for what I need, to feel like I'm disappearing. And also at other times I experienced what it's like to be too loud, too assertive, to use too many words. Eventually I move from the extremes of myself as I get to know them into the middle where there's balance, where I know that I am allowed to take up space and I can also be fair to someone else. In Triangle 3, I have experienced that beautiful middle landing, like a light bulb moment. So I know it in my head and I feel it in my body. I know I can be assertive now, calmly assertive, not forcefully assertive. This emerging real space is where grounded assertion without over-explaining exists, where things are calm and simple and there's an ease to it all. When the horizontal edges of me are cared for and brought into the middle to connect back together, the vertical edges of me are also nurtured. This means that my foundations and roots are strengthened and I will feel grounded and solid in my sense of self. My inner world will feel so much better. The other vertical edge I have, which is opposite and equal to my foundations, is my surface level self, my outer facing self, the thing that can be seen. So if you imagine that humans are like a sea, you would have the seabed and you would have the surface. It's that sort of difference. I've been thinking that if the foundation could be considered to be your body, then the surface would be considered to be the head, the place I speak from. So in that position, I will now be able to advocate for myself, know that I'm allowed to take up space, and also be able to be fair to the other person and recognise that we can both be present and be considered, and that sometimes alignment is better than agreement. So I can know that I can disagree with someone, but I can see why the thing they need is necessary. So there's this beautiful middle space where there isn't the conflict over who's right or wrong. There's just what's real and what's necessary and what fits that particular moment. And that's where the balance comes from. So as I reach the end of this video, I'm going to share these photos, which are the parts of the Realcovery model in the order that I've used them this time round. They get used in a different order every single time I use this to process. So this time round, triangle 1 represented the old pattern I had. The dashed line stood for the discomfort I felt in my body when I wasn't being true to myself. Triangle 2 represented the growing phase, the questioning phase, so essentially unmaking and remaking, the creating phase, finding balance, and then at the end of that phase, which happens in real time, so it doesn't define, it doesn't happen in a defined 3 weeks. It can take 6 months if that's the time it needs. There's this point of connection that's smack bang in the middle of the seesaw scales where everything comes together and you go, oh yeah, I know that now. And then triangle 3 represented the emerging real, because once you've had this moment of realization, recognition, then life doesn't stop there. You don't suddenly awaken and go, oh, I'm done. You awaken as something new, and that new thing needs to then be taken forwards into life to establish and grow and become stronger. Humans are made of nature, and new natural things like little saplings will put big effort into sending roots down, to strengthening those roots so that from those roots they can grow strong. So it's all connected. And so the last photo I'm sharing is of the response that will happen is the strengthening of the roots and the foundations. So eventually, if you manage to reach this point, you'll feel upskilled and you'll also feel grounded and stronger. So yeah, those were the phases of the model, the parts of the model that helped me process this today. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll come back for more.